Hi guys and welcome back to Flow. So this is the second part of a two-part video that I'm releasing on the channel talking about Ragdoll in the context of crowd simulations. So make sure to check the first one, otherwise you will not be able to fully understand what's going on today. The focus of today will be DOPNet and simulations. So without further ado, let's dive in. So here we are in Houdini, and as you can see we have the setup from last time where we have the crowd, the constraints, and the ground. Today we're going to dive into the document. The first step will be to create a crowd solver. Then as you can see we need some inputs. So the first one is a crowd object I will create in a moment. Let's actually create a crowd source. So I will drop down a crowd source node. If I connect this one and if I say first context geometry, basically this one is reading the first input from here. So it's reading my crowd that I can simply visualize over here. So thanks to this one, I have my crowd inside my simulation. Then I want to import some animations, so I'll create a crowd state. The clip name will actually be the name of the node, $S, as you can see over here. So I will name this one run. Then I will duplicate it with Alt, and then I will call this one Ragdoll. So now the run needs to be into locomotive because we set up all the locomotion before in the previous videos. Then the Ragdoll, it doesn't need to be set in locomotive, but we need to change the RBD Ragdoll properties. So the Ragdoll will be completely simulated by RBD, so by physics, by collisions. So we need to change it from ignore to active. And the run, we want the switch between the run animation and the Ragdoll to be as smooth as possible. So we want to set this to animated static. Then I will create a merge. I will connect it to over here and then into the third input. Now I have a crowd source, I have my animations, we need some constraints. We created the constraints at this stage, we just need to import them inside. And as you can see, they are in the second context. So let's go inside. And now I will create a hard constraint relationship and a twist constraint relationship. Please make sure to select this one, as this one has a very similar name, but we need to select the constraint relationship. So I'll drop it down. If you remember, we created two types of constraints: the pin that hold all the bonds together, and then the twist that defines the degrees of motion of a single agent in the crowd. So going inside again, over here, these are the pin constraints that by default are called hard. That's not correct. Let me change the name so we can import them correctly. Then over here, we can check the name is correct, so it's perfectly fine. The only thing that we need to understand is that these parameters in particular into the twist constraints will act as a multiplier on what you have outside. So for instance, if you check here, we have an agent constraint network and we have a bias factor of 0.3. If I set inside a bias factor of 0.3 again, this one and the one inside will be multiplied to 0.9. That's why, to avoid the values changing, I will set all the values inside to 1. So over here I will change every single value to 1. So allow me to just change these values, and don't forget to go into the translation limits because also these parameters are present outside. So let me go here and change this to 1. Now all of this should be correct. The next step is actually to merge these two together. So I'll create a merge node, and then I want to create a constraint network. I will plug my constraints into the second input, and over here we need an object. An object in the context of the crowd is just a single agent. So over here I will create a crowd object, and in this node we don't need to set anything up. Just know that this one is importing the agent itself, so it needs that these constraints relate to a specific agent. And now that we have all the constraints set up, we have a crowd source and we have animations. We just need to define how to simulate the Ragdoll state. You see, it's particularly problematic because we cannot simulate physics correctly with a crowd solver. We need to create another solver that's called bullet. In this bullet solver, for now, I will just change some values. I will increase the iterations so my simulations will be more correct, as it will be computed more times. And I also want to change the sleeping time. When the agent falls and it sort of dies, it doesn't really move, so we don't need to compute again and again and again those collisions when it falls down. In this case, I will actually change that to 0.5, so our simulation will be a little bit smoother. This can help dramatically when you have a great amount of agents. And now I am in the situation where I have two different solvers. How do I merge them? There is a node called multi-solver. With this one, I can plug my crowd solver and my bullet solver over here. And over here, we need an object. Again, we have our object over here. So at this stage, we are almost done. Into the constraint network, although we're not importing really the constraints from outside, we are setting some parameters, but over here, we didn't say that we want to import our second context geometry. If you did everything correctly, you should see your constraints popping up over here. They are just a little bit bigger than usual. What I will do, I will go in here into the guide options and I will disable my guide geometry. That it's on by default. We are almost done. We just need our ground, so our terrain. So I will create a terrain object. This node doesn't allow you to choose a specific context, so third input or whatever. So I will need to just go outside, copy this node, and inside I will refer to this node where it says sub path. I will just press enter and I will check use height field because I'm using a height field outside, and then I will create a static solver because of course this ground won't really move. So let me connect it over here into objects to be processed, and I will merge now this multi-solver and this static solver with a simple merge node. The only problem is that they are not really responding to the terrain. This goes by the crowd solver that is managing all of this. So into the crowd solver, let's go into the terrain. I will enable terrain projection, and again into subpath I will paste the same path of before, and I want to also enable foot locking. If it was not clear, the foot locking is actually created here into this chopnet that we created in the previous videos. It's actually a signal that it's reading when the agent foot is on the ground and when it's not. So when it's not on the ground, it will give it a green color that you can visualize over here. And when it's on the ground, like in this case it's not really on the ground, we can move a little bit forward so we can see when it actually touches the ground completely. Now it's red, so in this case it will not slide, it will be kept firm into position, and that's the correct behavior. So for now I will disable the guides, and I'm almost done. The last step is actually to create transition, because we don't know how to switch between run and ragdoll. So I'll create a crowd transition, I will plug it in. I want to switch in this case from a run to a ragdoll state. That's amazing, although it's giving us an error because we don't know how or when to switch, and that's defined by a trigger. So I'll plug a crowd trigger inside, and there are lots of triggers that we will explore in this series, but for now let's actually select time. So after a certain amount of time the animation will change. So I can define it by seconds or frames. I will leave it as frame 20, and I will leave a random offset of 10. That means that some of them will switch at frame 10 and some of them will switch at frame 30, and that should be done. So I can now go outside. Before visualizing our agents, I can actually reset simulation, and now I can press play. If you did everything correctly, you should see your agents switch to the ragdoll state, but they are flying. Although that's pretty cool, it's not realistic. So in order to change that, we need some gravity. So over here I will create a gravity force. By connecting it inside, it will do everything as default. So again, let's go outside and let's see the results. As you can see, they're falling realistically. Oh, look at this one is sort of flying. So I hope this one was helpful, I hope this one was clear. Again, Ragdoll is not one of the simplest things to set up in crowd. I really hope these videos were understandable. If you managed to replicate this setup, please let me know, just drop a comment. It means a lot because I know that you like this content. So again, if you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks.